What's going on, everybody? It's your boy JT. Welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Live. It's your boy JT, and I am joined by a very, very, very special man, Mr. Ibrahima.
What's going on? I'm your host, Bad Guy Ibra, aka Ibrahim. I'm your favorite Gambian. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate James Toon invited me on his show, ladies and gentlemen, to uncover or break down UFC 271 between Israel Adesanya, the last Stylebender, and obviously the former UFC middleweight champion in Robert Whittaker. James, my friend, mate, how are you doing today?
Well, I am doing absolutely fine. Thank you very much, especially after that beautiful, beautiful performance last night. But that's enough of the football, enough talking about that, because as you touched on there is one main reason why we are all here, because this weekend, the last Stylebender, Israel Adesanya, is going to be taking on Robert Whittaker again on the rematch. First of all, I guess there's no better place to start than with the original fight. What did you think about that one?
The original fight, which took place in Melbourne, Australia, by the way, this was one of the biggest events in UFC history. I mean, you could probably compare it to the one in which Ronda Rousey fought Holly Holmes, mate. But honestly, the crowd in the Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, the Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, honestly, was incredible. And Adesanya went into the fight very, very, very confident, incredibly confident, and he managed to get the KO. You know what I mean? No one expected it. It was doubted by the vast majority of the MMA community, because most people thought that he couldn't do it, but he turned in and just got the knockout victory. Honestly, incredible. But the question is, could he do it again? That's the question, James. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, looking at the first fight, you say he came in as the underdog. You say nobody expected it. I tell you what nobody expected was the way that the fight went. That was an absolute whitewash, in my opinion. That was an absolute masterclass by Adesanya. I mean, the things for me that really stand out for him is his balance and his agility. I mean, the way when he throws those leg kicks, the way he manages to keep perfect balance and never seems to fall over. And he actually really reminds me of course, my mind has gone blank. Anderson Silva. How could I forget that name? He reminds me so much of that kind of cat-like agility. And I don't know if you remember Silva's knockout, one of his most famous knockouts against Forrest, where he enters the Matrix and he's walking backwards, ducking shots, and then hits him as he's leaning back. It's kind of a similar kind of knockout here. He's kind of leaning back against Whittaker in the first fight. He's leaning back, like taking a couple shots, just missing them, and then slaps him with the left hook as he's going back and knocks him out. It really reminded me of him. And obviously the way he fights, especially with the leg kicks and stuff, is quite similar.
Yeah, he had mentioned, that's a great point, honestly. You remind me that of the fact that he's mentioned, he actually talked about Anderson Silva, being his idol, essentially, someone he's looked up to. And when he fought Anderson Silva back in 2019, I mean, it was a sensational fight. It was a great fight, honestly. Adesanya had said, I mean, he showed so much respect to Silva, and his style, let's be honest, does emulate Anderson Silva's style, don't you think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially with the leg kicks, like I was saying. I mean, that I'd say, I don't know about you, but that seems to be his biggest asset.
Yeah, so this then begs the question, I'm going to ask you this, right? Because obviously it's almost like, an undisputed fact that Anderson Silva is the greatest middleweight champion.
Is Adesanya better?
Right?
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, essentially, is Adesanya better? And do you reckon Adesanya could walk his way up into creating a GOAT status for himself? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. I was actually watching a Chael Sonnen piece on it the other day, where he was talking about some guy was saying, Anderson Silva's the GOAT. There's no debate about it. He was over the hill. I mean, he was 42, I believe, when he fought Adesanya the first time. Oh, he's over the hill. He's done. There's no way, I mean, until maybe future results he could get there. But then he was kind of saying, well, look, he beat him. Therefore, that has to have some sort of stock in it, no matter how old he was. I mean, I'm not so sure about it, because I think especially in combat sports, once you get a lot older, you lose a hell of it. Especially the way Anderson Silva fights. He relied so heavily on his reflexes and his agility, and that kind of stuff falls very, very quickly. I think he's got a long way to go. But what I do think he does have is the swagger. I think the reason why people would declare Anderson Silva the GOAT is not necessarily because of, I mean, yes, he had the record amount of championship defenses. Yes, he was slaying everybody. Some of those people weren't of extremely high caliber. Some were. Obviously, the game's evolved. The people that people are fighting now are of a lot higher skill set than the people Anderson Silva are generally fighting. But it was the swagger of the way he did it. The class. He just did it with sauce.
The confidence.
And Adesanya has that. Like, he knocks someone out and he starts breakdancing on the stage. He's doing the Michael Jackson moonwalking in the fight. So I think he could be on his way to it. What about you?
Could be, honestly. I think it's going to be hard, though, to be honest, because Anderson Silva, I mean, you got to remember, the guy had been around in the UFC for a while. Oh, well, he's retired now, but when he won the title, he did back in 2006, right? So that was from 2006 to when he lost it in 2013, right? There's a huge gap. It's about 7 years, right? And within that 7 year gap, honestly, mate, he's done incredible things, dude. Defended the title twice against Chael Sonnen, knocked out Forrest Griffin, knocked out Stephan Bonner, knocked out Vitor Belfort, dude. Just the list just goes on. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's possible that Adesanya can maybe establish himself as a UFC middleweight. But in my opinion, if you compare Israel Adesanya to someone like Anderson Silva, maybe personality-wise, Anderson Silva is a little bit reserved, but I think when it comes to the greatest of all time, with regards to accomplishment, I think Anderson Silva, no one can beat him, mate.
Yeah, but it depends on the longevity, doesn't it? Because would you say that the people have got better?
30 years old.
But would you say the people that... Yeah, exactly, but Silva was fighting up until he was 40, so it's still time. But would you say generally the people that Adesanya would be coming up against now are of a higher quality than a lot of the people that Silva was coming up against?
Yeah, totally, 100%. I think people have definitely gotten better now than back in the day, because you got to remember, people were slightly exploring with MMA. You know what I mean? It was almost a new concept. People are coming from different backgrounds, like Muay Thai. Some people are coming from boxing, and what the goal was essentially to merge them all together into this one thing called mixed martial arts. So it's fairly new at the time, but now we have a concept or a grasp of what it really is. You know what I mean? So people are getting better. Definitely, people are wrestlers. You know, wrestlers who have good striking, strikers who have good wrestling. So yeah, definitely, I would say fighters now are a lot better than fighters back when Anderson Silva was middleweight champion. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think though that kind of goes to say that if Adesanya does carry on going on a tear, then he could potentially beat that. But I'd say in the middleweight division, there doesn't seem to be too many standout guys that are really going to help put him in the limelight to achieve that GOAT status. I think if there is one person that is going to achieve that is going to rival Anderson Silva, I think there is someone currently fighting that could do that. And I think you know exactly who I'm talking about. And I'll give you...
Stylebender.
No. Very...
In the middleweight division?
No. Just in the UFC in general. Someone...
In general. Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian nightmare.
Yeah, Kamaru Usman. I think he could rival Anderson Silva. I don't know about you.
I mean, I think it's possible, mate. He's been knocking people out left, right, and centre. And you know what's amazing about Anderson Silva, the native of Curitiba, Brazil, was the fact that he actually knocks people out, unlike GSP, who is largely dominant in his performances against his opponents. But GSP always tends to go to decision. Anderson Silva finishes people. Kamaru Usman largely finishes people. Do you know what I mean? So that's the advantage that he has, because no one can turn around when he retires, like undefeated. Well, he's only been defeated once in the UFC. No one can turn around and say that his fights were boring. You know what I mean? I mean, he's knocking people out. So definitely, I think you're right about that. Totally 100% correct. I think the Nigerian Nightmare is definitely the closest into matching Anderson Silva. Obviously John Jones as well, but he's been away for a while. But anyways, what do you think Whittaker's chances are in beating Adesanya in the second fight?
Well, actually,